right now. You might be tuning into this on LinkedIn. You might be tuning into this on Instagram. Hello on Instagram if you are. You might be tuning in on YouTube, on Twitter, or on Facebook. Wherever you're from and however you're tuning in, welcome, welcome, welcome. It's fantastic to have you here. Okay, so this is the first live broadcast of a mini series that I've decided to quite uncreatively call Laura's Live at 5. Do forgive the simplicity, but it's going to be a mini series, and it's sponsored by my signature branding program, which is called On Her Terms. And as you might imagine, because of the name of the program, it's designed specifically for female business owners who are serious experts within their chosen field and industry. So if you know that you are this woman, or you might know someone who is an absolute expert, she's done all of the qualifications, she's got years of experience in corporate and through running her business, then this is absolutely a live to tune into now. All that being said though, this woman is starting to feel a little bit frustrated, a little bit peeved, because things just don't feel like they're on her terms. So she's had years of sacrifice in becoming highly qualified. You have to sacrifice a lot of things to afford tuition fees or to just do the damn work to get the certificate. She's probably feeling a little bit peeved and sick of trying to dance this crazy anti-feminist illusion that we have about women having it all and looking fantastic while she's doing it. I think that's an anti-feminist pack of baloney, but I understand what it feels like when you're trying to subscribe to that and behave in that way, because it's what we've been programmed to think since we were all little girls. So that might be ticking you off at this point. And sick and sacrifice from years of working in corporate. So it might be that she's ready to leave corporate, throw her hat out, take her hat out of that ring and sashay away and do it her way. Or it might be that she did that a while ago and things just aren't paying off the way that she thought they would. If any of those things apply, you are in the right place. If you've just thought of a friend of yours who absolutely fits that bill, I want you to share that live with her so she can come and join us. Okay, next bit. So let me ask you this in the comments. Oh, great to hear. Yes, so true. Thank you. I'm glad I'm resonating with someone. Fantastic. So the next side of it is, do you remember back in the day in the 80s or 90s when you were a teenager or a tween and you lived for the magazines that we had back then? And the first thing that you do, or the first thing that me and all my friends would do, is we go straight to the back page and read the problem pages. My Lord, the things I learned about life from the problem pages of, I'm talking about Bliss magazine, I'm talking about Miss 17, Just 17, I'm talking about even Smash Hits had a good problem pages section. Shout out if you can remember any retro mags from back in the day and what you might have learned from the problem pages. But that is the vibe that I'm trying to bake into tonight. So it's about having a little bit of nostalgic fun together and revealing a little bit of like secrets. Hey Phil, mwah, lovely to see you, can't wait to see you in June. And getting into the nitty gritty and sometimes a little bit of a spicy story as well. So that's what I want to bring when we're talking about nightmare clients. This isn't about having a massive bitch session, although if you do want to vent, go ahead, comments. There might be someone else who's having a nightmare with a client and you guys can connect and have a little bit of a rant together. But I want to say that if you've been running a business for at least a year, I am willing to bet good spending money that you have experienced at least one, if not many, nightmare clients. This happens to everyone at the beginning of their business journey, and it can sometimes rear its ugly head over and over again. Just when you think you've learned the lesson, someone pulls you back in and you're like, no, I've got another nightmare client. So that's the topic of tonight. And it is actually very strongly connected to having sometimes quite a major branding problem. So I've got some pre-submitted questions here. This is backwards on Instagram. I hope it's the right way everywhere else. Hashtag MwahTV, that's my YouTube channel. And I'm channeling a little bit circa Big Breakfast vibes. Do you remember they'd all have prompt cards like this on Big Breakfast, which is a breakfast show here in the UK that was very irreverent and very 90s. Love to you if you remember that. I used to love watching that before going to school. Now, these are the stories, these nightmare client stories. If you're in business and you've been to an event, it might be an expo, might be at a fair, it might be a thing with a bunch of speakers that are really impressive to you. These are the types of stories that come out after everyone's had a couple of drinks in the bar at the night. And you're just like, you'll not believe this. Wait till I tell you this one. That's what we're talking about today. So if you're thinking about that, you can share in the comments. We're going to be talking about this sort of type of client. We're talking about nightmare team members next week if you want to jump in on that one. But the stories get embellished, don't they, when you're in a bar? And I've made sure that you can submit a story in an anonymous way. So it might be that you think, oh, you're kidding me, Laura. I'm not going to tell you a story about a nightmare client and have that tarnish my brand. Are you crazy? So I've given you the option to submit this story anonymously. And I've got 2 fantastic anonymous stories coming up, which really did make me chuckle because I related to them. You might too as well. The branding part of this, though, is thinking about a nightmare customer is just the same as thinking about a perfect customer. It's just on the other way. It's the other way around. And talking about perfect customers, you've probably seen branding people like me on your social media feeds talking about it. I'm coming to them, Georgia. It's all around the emotional factor and the things that underpin your business operations and processes as a brand. And sometimes this is the part of branding strategy that is skirted over. Everyone talks about colors and logos and motifs, but nobody talks about the nitty gritty. This is what, for me, branding is all about, specifically branding strategy. So we're talking about the emotional, intentional factors that repel the wrong people away and attract the right perfect customers to you. That's an intentional strategic decision that you should be making with the way that you've built your brand. If you're sitting there thinking, yeah, I just got a bunch of colours and a logo done, this is why I'm here tonight in your feed. The other element around this is expectations and predictable on-brand behaviors. So that's going to come out in some of the stories and questions I've got for you tonight. And then the whole overall theme of that is the emotion of engaging with you along the way. Even if it's a hellish experience, how do you want your customer or nightmare customer to feel about you as a brand after it's all said and done? Okay, so let's get into the first one. Right. This one is not anonymous, so let's start with this. This is from Laurie, and Laurie has Laurie Sterling Consulting, and she says, I'll read it out. So, hi Laura, I'm sending you this question on behalf of my growing community and network of OBMs and operational experts. I help business owners fix their bottlenecks with delegation, automation, systemization, and innovation. That's a lot of things, Laurie. In addition to this client work, I also help OBMs upskill themselves into becoming COOs so that they can help more and earn more in the process. I'm going to just clarify what a COO is. So that's Chief of Operations, if you've never heard that term. And OBM means Online Business Manager. So if you've got an online business or you're in the online entrepreneurial space, you might be familiar with these terms. But just in case you've never heard of it, there's an explanation. So she says, here's the question. It is so frustrating when you can see a potential client who could seriously benefit from improved operations, but they don't fully understand what hiring a COO can do. To make this worse, it feels like the pool of OBMs is growing rapidly, and we think that that's to do with COVID. This has started to increase that scarcity and competitive element among us as a community. How do we sell our perfect solution to people who don't fully understand what we do? Now, I'm just going to say before we dive into the answer, Laurie has an amazing podcast. I highly recommend you check it out. You can go to lauriesterling.com. We'll put a link to that in the show notes. So if you're online, Laurie, you can pop a link in the comments if that's better for you, maybe direct to your podcast page. But if you're interested in the operational side of things, by all means, check it out. It's a really good listen. She has an amazing Australian accent, which I could listen to all day long. So the thing that comes out to me from this question, Laurie and Laurie's community, is it's about this expectation thing, which I kind of hinted at before we read out the question. Now, straight away, I want to know, who are you all aiming yourself at? So you've developed this wonderful community where you have this in term of OBM and what are the finer differences between an OBM and a COO. But do the people that you're selling this to understand the nuanced differences, and do they even know what those letters mean, even though they need you? So that would be my first challenge to you as a group, and you might all look at me and go, yeah, Laura, they know. But I'm willing to bet that they might say they know, but they probably don't fully know. So I would be trying to fight the fight as a community and educate people about that over and over and over again ad nauseum. And let's face it, the way that business is going now, there's going to be more online elements to every type of business in the coming year. So I don't agree with what you've said there about OBMs going into such a wide pool and it kind of oversaturating the market. I think it might be that the OBMs are gathering, but there's a lot of businesses out there who just don't realize that they need you yet. So yes, educate, and you should educate through content, but that is not the solution. You need money now, you need sales now, you need to be building your brands now. So I would be thinking about how can you niche. And when I say niche, I mean specifically thinking about the type of client that you want to niche to. So I've thought up a little bit of an example. Let's pretend, right? Example number one is a person who's got a chain of hair salons, and they in COVID had to close all of their salons and put all of their staff on furlough and ate into all of their savings, maybe got into a bit of debt. But in that process thought, do you know what, damn it, I've got 20 odd years experience as a salon owner. I've got a chain. I can teach a few salon owners a few things. So they've randomly set up this online structure in their business. Maybe it's a membership, maybe it's a coaching thing, maybe it's a program. But they are now teaching other salon owners how to expand into going into a chain. And that's a very specific requirement for a very specific type of salon owner who wants a very specific type of business model. It's real niche, right? But they are making a load of money doing this for salon owners up and down the country, could be even on an international scale. We know if you're in the entrepreneurial online business space, they're probably going to help get benefit from at least an OBM, if not a chief of operations person, because of the way that they want this to grow, right? But the way that you speak to them has to be using salon lingo, hairdresser talk. You have to behave as the brand who fits them. So straight away, from my years of experience working with people who are experts in the beauty space, when I've done brand photography, I'd never send anyone in that space an email. I'm going to ring them on the phone. They love to talk in person or on the phone, or even quick voice memo bubbles. I'm never sending them an email because I know they've never got time to read it and they're never going to get to it as quickly as I want them to. So straight away, there's a brand behavior. If you're an OBM who wants to serve that particular client, you're going to change because you know that it works for them. And I came up with some goofy puns. I am not a copywriter, so please don't judge. I'd be having things on my website that says things more like, let's just cut to the point. You've grown this online business. You want to do it this way, and I have some scissors in there. You're saying to them in a subtle way, I'm here especially for you, salon owner. Maybe something around razor sharp organization to ombre your creative personality and charm with more of a structure around this. You're speaking to them in language that they talk all day long. Whereas if you're an OBM or a COO who's aiming at maybe more of a corporate online business, maybe it's a group of insurance brokers who are learning how to be better insurance brokers, or maybe they're fighting the fight and trying to facilitate underwriting that speaks more to our needs and our risks right now. You would not do that. You're going to be on email all the time. They want to have evidence, written evidence of every type of communication. So that would be a clear brand behavior in the way that you use your operations with that client. And you'd be maybe talking to them about having litigious awareness in all communications. That would appeal to them. Or saying anything about mitigating risks, I had a job once in the world of insurance. Everyone likes to mitigate everything all the time. So mitigating risks, or building a relationship matrix with all of the delegates involved. You see how straight away the tone, the phraseology, and what you're using in the way that you're reaching out to them is significantly different. So the way that the branding strategy works is it's that approach, but it's also with your signature flair and flourish on top. So that's the key thing to remember in the way that we do this. So I hope that's helped your OBM community, Laurie. Please do feedback to me and let me know. Let's dive in then to an anonymous story. So this is, okay. Hey Laura, I was in one of those horrible cash flow situations when money's getting increasingly tighter. I'm sure we can all relate. So as you can imagine, my desperation was increasing. Against all of my better judgment, I decided to offer someone a slightly different set of services to what I normally sell, because I knew I could probably do this work standing on my head, and it would probably help to take away my cash flow pain. I was far too transparent about my desperation in hindsight with the contact who signed up for a long-term contract. And I'm still not sure to this day if she was conscious of just how much she took advantage of me. It started one night when I was relaxing before bed, and she phoned me out of the blue to ask me why I still hadn't replied to her email that she'd sent me that same night at 9:40 p.m. My desperation kicked in and I decided to keep on the phone, and I talked with her for an hour, but it was about nothing crucial or important or urgent. Long story short, I ended up having to fire her. Well, there's no surprises there. And we are now no longer friendly or contacts. Oh, that's a shame. She thought she was getting a bargain personal assistant who was going to be at her beck and call for 24/7, and I was just trying to cover my overheads. Surely this isn't a branding problem, is it? It was just one of the many times I've made a massive cock up as a business owner. And obviously that's anonymous. Well, first of all, pet, I want to say to you, don't be worried. We'll all make cock-ups all the time. I'm sure any business owner in the comments watching this live or on the replay has made plenty of cock-up. And actually, that's a key part of what it is to be a business owner. So don't be so hard on yourself. And we probably all relate to this story, right? Where you do a little bit of scope creep on your services because you're desperate for a bit of cash. And then it ends up turning into a total nightmare. So the things that I think you were probably missing when you were doing this is having a correct onboarding process. And funnily enough, the OBMs tuning in would probably have been able to make that way better for we're using their clever operational heads. But the thing that I would want to apply to that, again, as the brand and flourish on the top, is how are you expecting them to behave? And how can they expect you to behave? You're kind of laying out the rules to them, and then if anybody out there has had a long-term client, so that's someone, maybe it's a long project that lasts for like 6 months or a year, or it's someone who's just in a rolling agreement with you and you could go on for years and years like that. There's this initial period where you have to kind of train each other. And if you're the service provider, I think that the onus is on you to do that in a beautifully branded way. So when they are naughty, i.e. ringing you in the middle of the night, you don't take the call, and then you politely follow up to them at 8:01 or whenever communications commences, 9:01, and you say, hey, I saw a call last night, just to remind you, I don't take calls at that time. That's not the service you've bought. If you want to add that to your service, you can, but every call past the hours of 5 p.m. or 4:30 p.m. or whenever the hell you decide are chargeable at £600 a minute. You're like, yeah, I'll take your call if you want to give me 600 quid a minute. And the caveat to that is I probably won't answer. Make it £6,000 if you really don't want them to ring. Make it 6 million, whatever. But you're setting that tone. Now, that's me in a Laura style, which is obviously part of my brand. And I'm very to the point. I'm very much in your face. This is the way it's going to be. deal with it. That's what people buy into when they buy part of my brand. You might have a very gentle, romantic brand, and you say, look, I love you so much, I want to be there for you. You would dress that up in your branded way. Let's move on to the next story because I have a feeling it might connect. So, big breakfast prompt card there. Okay, hey Laura, so I feel like this is happy hour already. Hey Laura, I once had a client who consistently paid my invoices 30 days late every single month. Either cheek. When I finally had to raise the issue with them, the finance director told me in an irritated state, we're not a bank, you know. I still think to this day that that finance director had gotten confused at which of us was acting like a bank. Yeah, touche. Anyway, because it became clear to me that this finance director really needed to feel like they were winning this communications for their ego issues. Well, yeah, it's clear they've got ego issues. I decided to discreetly put up my late payment fees on all of our invoices moving forward to cover this extra admin and chasing, but with 60 days interest. So that's quite aggressive. I like it. Okay, the client, who was the finance director of the client, felt like they were winning at this. Oh, how petty. Because they carried on sticking to paying invoices late, and we didn't care anymore because we were able to charge for the frustration and inconvenience. That was quite rightly sent in by someone anonymous. So if you're feeling like you've got a story to share for next week when we're talking about nightmare team members, I would highly recommend you share a story of that spicy nature in an anonymous way, unless you really want to declare war, in which case we need to have a whole public relations conversation before I go live next Tuesday. I'm intrigued to know if anyone else knows finance directors like this. So this is very much, I'm getting the impression that this is quite big business to big business. So B2B, or you're dealing in a big service that you're delivering maybe, and you have to send an invoice into a whole finance department, and now you're having to play this stupid dance with them. But again, I think this one and this one around the client is about the expectations, right? So you're training them. You could have avoided getting to that stage where you now have to have this confrontation with this finance director. I'm trying not to swear. I have an opinion, no, I'll just say that. I have an opinion of them, who does have ego issues. You could have said straight away, the minute the first invoice wasn't handled right, in the way that you're doing your onboarding in a beautifully branded way, that actually that's not what we were expecting. Were you expecting something different? Let's nip this in the bud. We want to be amazing suppliers. We know that you've got the potential to be an amazing client. I probably wouldn't say it that directly, but that's how you're going to tackle that. So I think those two things are very connected, aren't they? Those two stories. Would you agree with that? I think the key thing to point out is that this is connected to my program. So my On Her Terms brand program, at one point we do actually have a whole activity around coming up with hypothetical situations that could potentially damage or challenge your brand. So it's almost using branding strategy. So all of the facts and the figures that we've worked out when we're getting the nitty-gritty stuff behind your brand, when we've made the decision about what type of brand you're going to be, we then start testing it out together. We're putting it through a rigor test, and in this instance this is to do with operational practice and public relations. So one of the for instances that we have is, boom, a big world event's happened. We all know that from the last few years, don't we? But how are you as a brand going to act based on all of the decisions you've made as a brand? And we work through that together. So that's actually a whole activity that we could have worked on, these two stories, if only you had been part of my amazing brand program. The link to take a look at the applications, because they're open right now, and that's what's sponsoring this weekly live mini series, is laurapearman.com/on-her-terms apply. And you'll see there's a whole reason behind why I have an application process to get in. I want to curate a community of people who can support each other. It's all about creating a safe enough space so you don't feel like you're in direct competition or you have any conflict of interest with anyone else on your program. So you can join and with confidence that that's going to happen. If we had an instance where maybe some of your OBMs, Laurie, from your community join, I would get in touch with you in advance and say, look, this person's involved. Do you want to carry on? Do you want to maybe relocate your program to a different round? You have choice and control, and I handle that in a completely confidential way. If you've really enjoyed the live tonight, I would love to have you next week. I'd love you to join in next week, where we're embracing problem pages from tween and teen magazines from the 80s and 90s. And I want you to visit my website, laurapearman.com/live-at-5, and that's the number 5, and you'll be able to see what's on the roster for the next 5 weeks ahead. So if you take a look at that and you think, oh yeah, I've got a good story about that, and I'm absolutely going to keep that anonymous because that's a real hair curler, then click on the button, fill in the form, and I'll feature you on the show. If you have a question and you're quite open about everyone knowing that you have that question, you can send it in and I'll give your business a plug. If you want to send me a really spicy story and you want a business plug unconnected from that, I can absolutely make that happen. I am happy to be a cheerleader for anyone else who's in business. I see myself as a natural connector. So as we've talked about Laurie's brand tonight, I'm happy to talk about your brand too. So the link for that is live-at-5 on my website. And if you want to go ahead and apply to the next round of the On Her Terms branding program, you need to go to on-her-terms apply. And I'll put a link to those in the comments next. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. It's been fantastic to see you all. And I will be around in the comments for the next hour or so while I'm having a little jubilation, celebration glass of wine, because I figured out how to multicast.